Hi guys and welcome to Fandom Newbie. My name is Shruti and today I am doing a personalized book recommendation video. So last week I put up a post on my community tab asking you guys to send me recommendation prompts and so many of you responded to that particular post. So thank you so much. I got like more than 70 comments. It was really overwhelming and amazing. But some of the comments that you guys left were so specific that I honestly couldn't think of any books to recommend for that particular situation. And so I have chosen 25 comments in all, some from the community post and some from my Instagram. And I'm going to be recommending books for those 25 prompts. I hope you guys enjoy this video and I hope you guys find some fun books to read. So without further ado, let's just get started. So the first prompt that I have is healing from any trauma and at the same time giving advice on self-love. And there are two actually. The second one is finding self-worth after finishing something toxic or traumatic. Now for that I have I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This is Jeanette McCurdy's memoir basically, and it talks about her extremely toxic relationship that she has with her mother, and because of that toxic relationship, the mental health issues that she goes through, the eating disorders that she goes through, and how she gets out of it. This book will make you uncomfortable at times. It is extremely honest. It is heart-wrenching. And I highly recommend listening to the audiobook as well when you're reading this book because it is narrated by Jeanette McCurdy. And yeah, it's just an extremely powerful, impactful, honest, heart-wrenching story. So highly recommend this if you're looking for a story about trauma and how someone got out of it. The next prompt is slow burn but sensible, and for that I am recommending Babel by R.F. Kuang. Now I have an entire dark academia vlog that's coming up in which I talk about this book in depth. So I'll keep it short over here, but basically this is a dark academia book and it's set in Oxford in the 1800s. But at the core of it, what this book is about is the British Empire, colonialism, and the horrors of the British Empire and colonialism, basically. This book is an extremely slow read. It has a lot of history thrown in. It has a lot of facts thrown in. It is very slow, but R.F. Kuang's writing is so beautiful, and the way that she has like woven this fantastical fictional tale, yet keeping it so rooted in truth and history and facts about colonialism is just spectacular. If you are into historical fiction and you like slow books that really suck you in eventually and impart a lot of knowledge, then highly recommend this one. The next prompt is best thriller and mystery book with short chapters, palace or house setting, easy and fast-paced, and good character building. Okay, so this one, for this one, I have The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This book is set in a mansion, and it is basically about this woman who has basically suspected to have killed her entire family. She is never arrested for that crime, but people think that she did it. And now she has a sort of like disease where she is completely paralyzed and she can't speak until a caregiver comes to take care of her. And now she wants to reveal her story to that caregiver and tell the caregiver exactly what happened. This book is like it really keeps you hooked because the chapters are such where you sort of are following present day events, but then you jump back to the time when Lenora, the old woman, is supposed to have committed those murders. So it jumps back and forth in time. And yeah, it's very gripping. Riley Sager has very simple writing. So yeah, check it out if you haven't. The next prompt is a book with extremely strong friendship between opposite gender friends, not romance, only friendship. And for that, I have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Now, this book is honestly, it's about friendship. It's about two friends who set out to make a video game together. And basically, they meet as kids in the hospital, and they play a video game together. And then they keep bumping into each other in different like points of their life until they finally come together to build a video game that becomes a huge success. This is a story of life, it's a story of friendship. There is some love and romance in this, but essentially, it's a story of two friends and how fame, success, money pulls them apart, and life in general, how life sort of pulls them apart, but how they make their way back to each other. It is a very, very emotional book. I cried while reading this book, so yep, check it out if you haven't. The next prompt is an underrated thriller to blow my mind yet rip my heart out, compelling me to sob and have sleepless nights. And yeah, I need some good, lovable side characters as well. That is quite a bit, but I think a good thriller to read with some of those prompts is The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. This is actually a zombie apocalypse book, and it has like one mind-blowing twist in it. From what I remember, I read this book ages ago. I also remember it being very, very heartwarming because at the center of it, the zombie that is like spoken about, this girl with all the gifts, is a zombie child. And in this world, zombie children are not like the mindless zombies who just want to like eat humans. They actually retain some of their human characteristics. So they actually have like intelligence and emotions, I believe. And so, yeah, there's a huge twist because of that, because at the center of it, there is a zombie child who a lot of like government people are trying to protect. So yeah, if you like zombies, if you like thrillers, and you want something that's heartwarming but also a bit scary, check this book out. Next up, we have books with a strong found family element like Six of Crows, or a standalone book which feels like the Six of Crows duology. And for this, I am recommending Wishes by V.E. Schwab. This book is very similar to Six of Crows in the found family, like the found family aspect of Six of Crows is very strong in Wishes. And it's also similar to Six of Crows because Six of Crows has a lot of gray, morally gray characters. And they're basically like a bunch of thieves and like bandits or robbers, whatever, who come together to carry out a heist. In Wishes, also, the characters that come together are completely grey. They are not, like, they're also, I think, like criminals, if I remember correctly. They have committed some horrible crimes and they come together for like one thing that they're carrying out. Wishes is basically about superheroes, and it's about the rivalry between two college friends. And so it's like one faction versus the other. And yeah, all the characters are morally grey, and it is a really, really dark and fun book. Next, we have a book with the best male character, someone who is kind and down to earth. All right, for this, I'm recommending the Guernsey Literary Potato Peel Pie Society. The main character in this book is extremely kind and lovable, and he's such a good love interest. I absolutely was like rooting for like the romance in this book because the guy was so sweet and shy, and yeah, it was just a really, really lovely romance. This book is set in Guernsey just after World War II is over, and it's basically about this secret book club that was set up during the Nazi occupation of Guernsey. And it's about a bunch of completely like misfit characters discovering their love of stories and books, and how that sort of brought them together during the Nazi occupation, and it helped them to build a community during a very, very horrible time in their lives. Definitely check it out. If you're someone who likes books about books and book lovers, you will really, really enjoy this book. All right, the next prompt is something like Silent Patient, The Book Thief, and some sort of Agatha Christie. Those three are very like disparate books to put together. So I'm assuming that you don't want a book that's all three of them combined in one, but you want one book for each book. So I'm going to take one of them, and that is something like The Book Thief. And for that, I'm recommending All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This is also set in like the times of World War II. and it is set in France. It has like a bunch of characters who we follow, and basically how war affects all of them. I've not read many books which give such, like, an honest, um basically an honest depiction of war, of how war just steals innocence away from children and steals innocence away from, like, people who are just trying to live their lives. And the book Thief did that, and I feel that All the Life We Cannot See does that also beautifully, especially when it comes to the lives of children, how war steals away their innocence. So yeah, highly recommend this book if you want a historical fiction book about World War II. It is just brilliant. Next, the next prompt is a book to stir up your emotions and remind you to be sensible and not impulsive, and how we shouldn't give up on love. Okay, for that, I don't have, again, like, this book, I don't think is for everything you said, but The Song of Achilles by The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller is definitely one that will stir up your emotions and will definitely, it gives like the lesson of how you should not give up on love. This book is just beautifully written. It's a queer love story. It will make you cry at the end. And yeah, it's just like one of the best mythological retellings I have ever read. So highly, highly recommend this book if you're looking for an amazing love story that will definitely make you cry. Next, we have a book with a very strong female protagonist with a sunny and positive personality, and could have a good influence on the reader. Okay, so I have two recommendations for this. The first one is Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. Sense and Sensibility is honestly very classic Jane Austen. It's about the lives of the Dashwood family, three daughters, and their mother, who is like recently widowed, and because of that they have been left in like poverty. And it's basically about how two of the daughters, they like fall in love with men, and like the different ups and downs in their romantic life, and also like as they're trying to basically get used to life on their own without their father and without a lot of money. Yeah, I think this book is perfect for your prompt because Marianne, one of the Dashwood sisters, has a very bright and chirpy and sunny personality, whereas Eleanor, I think, is someone who can be a good role model. Secondly, if you want to take like an example from Hindu mythology, then I recommend Sita by Devdutt Patnaik, which is a retelling of the Ramayana. Sita is definitely a very, very strong female protagonist, and I think she is a wonderful role model for young girls or anyone in general. I honestly loved Devdutt Patnaik's retelling of the Ramayana. I loved his retelling of the Mahabharata also with Jaya, but I like really liked this one a lot. So yeah, also check out Sita by Devdutt Patnaik for this prompt. The next prompt is a horror story set in rural India. For this, there is a book called Haunted by Neil De Silva. Neil De Silva writes a lot of horror stories, and a lot of them are set in rural India. Haunted is a collection of real ghost stories, and they're set in different parts of India. Not all of them are set in rural India. There are some stories which are set in, like, there's one story which is set in Bangalore, if I'm not mistaken, and there are some which are set in like rural Rajasthan and stuff. But overall, Haunted has some really like chilling ghost stories which are set in different parts of India. And yeah, I think it's like the perfect like Indian horror book that I've read. Next up, we have a fantasy standalone series with the right amount of romance, action, world building, and of course, a satisfying ending. All right, for that, I'm recommending the Shades of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab. This is the second book in the series. The first book is called A Darker Shade, The Darker Shade of Magic. This is the second book, which is A Gathering of Shadows, and the third book is A Conjuring of Light. This book is exactly what you said. It has just the right amount of romance. It has fantastic world building. It has the most lovable characters that you will definitely fall in love with. It has a very, very satisfying end. It's a trilogy, and the last book, in my opinion, ends really, really well. And what did you say? Yeah, it has a lot of action. This book series is basically about like different parallel Londons, and these magicians who can cross over between these Londons and like the politics of one London versus another. And it's just super action packed. The romance is fantastic. And yeah, I love this series. If you're looking for an amazing fantasy trilogy to read, please check out the Shades of Magic trilogy. It's just absolutely, absolutely perfect. Next, we have something that feels like Erin Morgenstern, but nothing high fantasy. Okay, so Erin Morgenstern wrote the Night Circus and the Starless Sea, and both those books, in my opinion, are extremely atmospheric books. But because they're fantasy, it's very easy to make something atmospheric. But a book that I've read that is extremely atmospheric without being fantasy is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. There are magical realism and fantastical elements in this book, but at the heart of it, it's the story of one woman who is Shakespeare's wife. Now, the thing is that not a lot is known about Shakespeare's wife, and so the author has taken a lot of creative liberties in writing her story. And because of that, and because of the magical realism elements that I spoke about, this reads, even though it's like historical fiction, it reads like a mythological book. It reads like something that's very, very fantastical, but it's not. And yeah, I just absolutely, absolutely love this book. It like sucks you in because of the writing, just how like beautiful and atmospheric it is. So yeah, highly recommend Hamlet if you haven't read it. A book that deals with adulting, especially in your 20s, making new friends, lost friendship, confusion, happiness, feeling overwhelmed by life, independence, all at the same time. All right. For that, I recommend Happy Place by Emily Henry. I know you mentioned like especially in your 20s. The characters in these books are older. I think they are like late 20s, early 30s, but everything else sort of like fits. This is a story about friendship at the heart of it, and how when life takes over, like, you know, when like adulting and life takes over, how you sort of drift apart from your friends, but also how you make your way back to each other. It is about happiness. It's a lot about confusion, about, you know, like what it is in your life that makes you happy, especially when it comes to things like your career or your relationship, what it is that truly makes you happy. This book discusses that. And yeah, feeling overwhelmed with life, with like, you know, the burden of adulting and independence, all of that is in this book, and I think it's written absolutely beautifully. I found a lot of myself in this book, especially like the struggle of finding what it is that truly makes you happy. I think this book tackles that really, really well. So highly recommend Happy Place by Emily Henry. Okay, the next prompt is a book with an end that is a bit philosophical, maybe an ending open to interpretation. I don't know if the ending was open to interpretation. It kind of was, but for this, I have The Psalm for the Wild Built. This is the book that I recommend. This book I recommend to everyone having a quarter life crisis. This book is like, it'll just wrap you up in a hug and make you feel so good if you're having a quarter life crisis, or if you're in your 30s and you're having like a life crisis of like what you don't, but like you don't know what you want to do with your life, whether it's like career, again, like you don't know what you want to do in terms of like what brings you true joy and happiness. You're just feeling completely burnt out. If you're feeling all of these things, then I highly recommend this book. It is fantasy fiction in a way, but at the heart of it, there are a lot of like philosophical, not teachings, but just like it makes you think a lot about your life, and it gives you, it imparts wisdom in a very like easily digestible manner that doesn't feel like preaching, or it doesn't feel like, you know, someone is telling you how to live your life, but it just gives you things to think about and makes you feel like really good about your life, especially if you're in a place of just like utter confusion about what you want to do with your life. Highly recommend this book. Like I said, it feels like a warm hug. Next up, we have a horror book recommendation for a reader who hasn't yet read any horror or explored the horror genre. I have two recommendations for you over here. The first one is Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. This is a graphic novel. I don't know if you can see. It's a very spooky graphic novel. Like some of the illustrations in this are very, very creepy, and like it's a bit disturbing, but because it's a graphic novel, I feel like it's very easily digestible. It's like some of them, like, they don't even have that much like written on the page, but like the illustrations are super creepy. So I think this is like great to like start reading horror, because it'll definitely creep you out, but it's not a lot of like, words and descriptions and things like that. So I think a graphic novel is a great place to start. And then the next book that I have is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. I think I've recommended a lot of V.E. Schwab books in this video because I love this author, if you guys couldn't tell. But anyway, Gallant by V.E. Schwab is another great book for someone who wants to get into the horror genre. It's like YA, so it's not like super duper like, gross and like creepy horror. It's just very like atmospheric horror. And I think that's the kind of horror that I like. I don't like horror which is like very, like the Exorcist kind of thing, where like things are very gross and like gruesome. I don't like that kind of horror. I like horror that makes me feel very like chilly, or like, something that's like very bone chilling and very atmospheric, and Gallant is exactly like that. So yeah, check it out if you haven't. Next up, we have a plot with school kids, not too childish, with friendship and no or less focus on romance. Now, I haven't read this book, but I feel like it fits your prompt, and that is Gin Patrol on the Purple Line by Deepa Annapara. Wow, I cannot pronounce her name. Like I said, I haven't read this book, but what it's about is these three kids in Delhi who try to solve the mystery of like disappearing children in their neighborhood. So a bunch of kids have gone missing, and they get involved in the investigation of trying to figure out why these kids are going missing. I don't think this book is very childish, even though the three main characters are kids. I know it's pretty heartwarming, but it's not very childish. Like, I don't think this is a children's book. It is like either young adult or an adult book, but the main characters are kids. So yeah, you can check this out. If you read it before me, let me know what you think about it. But I really need to get to reading this book soon. Up next is a sad book on war-torn countries. Like, for example, I loved A Thousand Splendid Suns. All right, if you loved A Thousand Splendid Suns, then the book that I recommend to you is Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. This is a graphic novel, and it's basically about Marjane Satrapi's life in Iran. And it basically talks about how Iran was converted into an Islamic state and the oppression that she and a lot of women faced during that time, how they revolted against like the regime. And it's very, very similar to A Thousand Splendid Suns in that way. And yeah, it talks about basically the history of Iran and everything that went wrong in that country. So highly recommend Persepolis. Again, I cried like a baby when I was reading that book. It is so heart-wrenching, and yeah, really, really, really beautiful book. Next is a fantasy book with a romance subplot with a lot of political intrigue and high stakes. For this, I'm going to recommend the Devabad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. This book series is like how I like to describe it. I've described it like in the past in many other videos as well, but it's basically Game of Thrones with genies. That's how I like to describe this series. It is a Middle Eastern inspired fantasy about genies set in this fantastical like kingdom, like not kingdom, fantastical capital city of Devabad that rules over the entire like jinn kingdom. And I know that sounds very childish, but it's not at all childish. It is extremely like the world building in this entire series is so good, especially the politics of it. I loved the series because of that. Like the political drama in this book series is amazing. It's very like Game of Thrones vibes. And also, yeah, there is a romance subplot, but it doesn't take like center stage. It's not like super duper romantic, but it's there just to offer like the right amount of like romantic feels in a book. And yup, if you like books with very good world building, like really good political drama and political intrigue, and very well developed characters, then check out the Devabad trilogy. I don't think you will be disappointed. Next up, we have a book that activates all your senses when you start reading, where you start feeling everything you read. For that, I have Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This is another fantasy book, and it is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. this book makes you feel cold. Like, even if you're sitting in summer in Bombay when it's like 35 degrees outside and you read this book, I guarantee you will feel cold. The way that like ice and snow and like those things are described in this book is just so chilling that like the cold sort of like seeps into your bones and makes you feel that way. It is just like really, really descriptive and again super duper atmospheric. This is perfect to read in the winter, of course. Like, you know, when you're like sitting very cozily in a blanket, this is like a really good book to read for that scenario. But yeah, it's also just a really nice fantasy story. So if you're looking for a story that makes you literally what you said, like it activates all your senses and makes you feel things, like not feel things emotionally, but like, you know, you can feel the vibe of like the different small towns and kingdoms described in this book. If you want that, then definitely check out Spinning Silver. The next prompt is, could you please suggest a book in which feels like Dan Brown meets Bill Bryson? This is a really fun prompt. And for that, I have The Martian by Andy Weir. Now, this I think has the thrilling and twisty aspects of Dan Brown, and it has Bill Bryson's humor. Though I do think like Andy Weir's humor is much better than Bill Bryson's humor, but it has like, it's a really, really funny book. This book is basically about an astronaut who gets stranded on Mars, and he basically has to find his way back to Earth, but he has very few like supplies. Like, he doesn't have enough food, he doesn't have enough oxygen, and so it's like basically it's like a survival story or a survival book. I'm sure a lot of you have already watched the movie which stars Matt Damon, but even if you have, I think the book is definitely better. The book is funnier, and I love like the science fiction elements in this book. So yeah, even if you watch the movie, then please read the book because yeah, I think it's better. Next up, we have books that give Marry My Husband K-drama vibes. Oh, I haven't read a lot of K-drama, but okay, so this is like the genre is comedy, romance, fantasy, drama. It has elements like time travel, infidelity, betrayed by a friend, betrayal, revenge, gaslighting, second chance, time altering, butterfly effect. Wow. Okay. For this prompt, the book that I'm recommending is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffinger. This book is more like romance drama. It's not really like a rom-com. It's more romance drama. And it has like fantastical elements, which is there in the title, which is time traveling. Yeah, it's about two people, Henry and Claire, who like Henry is a time traveler, and how he and Claire sort of fall in love with each other because Henry keeps time traveling in and out of Claire's life, and how they sort of make this love story work because of Henry's strange time traveling condition. And yeah, it has a lot of twists and turns and a lot of drama. So I think for someone who's a K-drama fan, this will be a good recommendation. And lastly, the prompt is a book that is interesting just because of its writing style, not the plot or characters. And for that, the perfect book is Whereabouts by Jhumpa Lahiri. This book is all vibe. That's it. It's just read it for the vibe. There's hardly any story. There's hardly any plot. It basically just follows the life of a woman as she's living like 1 year of her life. And that's about it. The plot, there's not much plot. There's not a lot of characters. But it's just all about the way that Jhumpa Lahiri, like the things that she makes you feel when you read her writing. Her writing is just absolutely beautiful. It's so like descriptive and vivid, and like she paints such a picture of like the Italian like small towns that this character is in this book. Like, you get transported to those towns and you can like feel the sun on your skin as you're like sitting in a cafe and like, you know, drinking an espresso or whatever. Like, you can feel all of that when you're reading this book. So yeah, read this for the vibes, not for the characters or the plot or like anything else. It's just the vibes. So yeah, that was my video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it and I hope you guys found some amazing recommendations. If you did, give this video a big fat thumbs up. Leave a comment down below letting me know some of your recommendations for these prompts. And of course, do subscribe to my channel for more book related videos. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.